Good afternoon. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. Good to have you with us today. Today, another in our series of interviews in regard to election 2022. We are doing this on an almost daily basis, and we will be straight through the primary on August 2nd, and again from the primary through the general election. These conversations are vitally important, folks, because this is essentially, Tanya Wheelis is with us today. Tanya may not have thought so, but this is a job interview. When you come down to it, we are hiring people for the United States Congress, for Attorney General, for Governor, etc. And you should approach things in that fashion as a voter. You should study the candidates. You should listen to what they have to say. Judge them on the basis of their command of information, their reasoning ability. All of that is vitally important. As the old saying goes, we get the government that we deserve. My God, I can't imagine what we did to get some of the government we've had this year. But anyway, I'm going to, Tanya, ask you to pull that up so it's about a hand distance from you. Tanya Contreras Wheelis is with us today. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Bill. I'm happy to be here, and we were talking about our love for radio earlier, and so I always enjoy these interviews because they're really, as you said, more like conversations. So it's going to be a pleasant way to spend the next hour or so.
May I give you a compliment right off the bat?
Absolutely. I'll take them all day.
Now, the recent Supreme Court nominee was asked, how do you define a woman? And I don't know, and which, in a sense, was a really unfair question. I don't know that I could answer that question. I know him when I see him. But I got to tell you, we had Dawn Grove in here the other day. We had Paula Tuliani-Zen in here yesterday. We have got some phenomenal candidates for office. May I call you a woman?
You may.
Okay, because in the Me Too era, I'm not too sure of what's okay anymore. But God bless you. You are an impressive woman with a very interesting background, and we will explore that background and the issues during the course of this hour. So thank you for being here.
Great.
Today.
Looking forward to it.
Now, I think this is a very pertinent question this year and any year, but I think especially this year. Tanya Contreras Wheelis has worked for the Phoenix Suns.
Correct.
An interesting background. We'll get into that in a moment. But what was going through your head? What caused you to say, you know what? I got to throw my hat in the ring. I can't not throw my hat in the ring.
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I get asked all the time. My mom said, why on earth are you doing this? She said, you have a great life. And really, as we have talked about a little before getting on, you feel called to do it. I will say that this is something that in prior years of my life, I've always been a follower of policy and involved in politics, in some way kind of on the periphery. But now it just felt like a pull, like it was time to stand up, and you look in the mirror and you ask yourself, what can I do? And I think at different seasons in our lives, the things we can do when we see things going the wrong way. And so to be clear, the reason I'm in this race is because I think that what's happening in Washington right now, from the White House on down through Congress, is the absolute antithesis of what I want to see from government. I like limited government. I like government that gets out of the way. I like government that focuses on our strengths and the greatness of our country and says, how do we adjust, versus what I feel like right now is, everything's terrible and it's just terrible. But wait, government's here to help, and they've got a government program for everything. It's just not what I believe good government is. And so when I see that and I think, okay, what can I do? At this moment, after talking with my husband, the answer was, look, we need good people to run. I'm fortunate. I'm in a position where I was able to step in and say, okay. My husband was frankly the last one that kind of convinced me. I'd talked to some personal friends and let them know what I was thinking. But it was Steve that said, look, swing the bat. Swing the bat. What have you got to lose? You get out there, you tell people what's in your heart, what you think. They're going to love you. They're going to elect you, because the husband has to say that. but what's the worst that could happen? And so that was the push. And I'm sure, like some of the other women you've had on, and men as well, really doing this for future generations. I mean, I am a mother, I feel a pull as a mother to leave things better than I found them. And that applies to government as well. And so I'm in the race, and it's been a fantastic journey since I got in last August, I guess.
Well, the other thing too, and I wish you success on this election and this foray into politics. But sometimes people, even Reagan ran twice for the White House. He ran against Carter in '76. Actually, we ran against Ford in '76, and right. Ford won the nomination. But Reagan ran a couple of times, and he was unofficially running for office probably for 20 years before that. But it's and I've had this conversation with a lot of candidates because I think I'm going to write a book after this campaign in honor of all the failed candidacies. The I got in it to lose book. I am flabbergasted at some of these people who they get the signatures, they're running for office, but they just don't have it together. It is like trying to fly through the eye of a needle, especially when you're talking about going up against the incumbent in this case, who is a very significant political figure. You might disagree with his views, but the guy's the former mayor of Phoenix. He's been in Congress now, 2 terms at this point?
This is his second. Mm-hmm.
So, he's not, and I had a Republican Senate candidate in here, Mick McGuire, recently, and I said to him, I was watching TV. I said, I saw an ad for Mark Kelly. I said, you and Republicans will underestimate him at your peril. I said, he looks more Republican than a lot of Republicans do. The guy's a former astronaut. He's got that look about him. What do they call it? The alpha male. He's got that alpha male look about him. So I said, yeah, ignore him at your peril. But Mick had a good line when he said, well, you know what, with Mark Kelly, when we meet up, he has to salute me.
That's a great line. I've heard him deliver that one.
Yeah,
it's good. Now, look, running a campaign is no joke. And again, you don't really appreciate it until you step into the arena. There's that great Teddy Roosevelt quote about the man in the arena, and it is absolutely true. I will tell you, Bill, having been in this now for almost a year as a candidate, for the rest of my life, I will have the utmost respect for anyone who is willing to put their name out there to run for an office. I don't care if it's dog catcher or president of the United States, because it's very easy to be an armchair critic, to hide behind your Twitter, to rail at the air when you're in your own home. But once you decide to run for office, you're putting it all out there. You're talking about issues that you may have only talked about with family and close friends. And you are subjecting yourself to others to opine on what they think about everything about you, from your looks to your talks to issues and everything else. So you really have to approach it, I think, to be successful in a very serious way. It doesn't just happen. As you said, getting the signatures is actually much harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You think, that we only need that many. There's 500,000 people in the district. We'll be fine. And then, there were 3 weeks of my life that probably cost me 10 years because you're thinking, are we going to get them? Are they going to be good? And of course it worked out. But that's just, that's kind of the ticket to enter. It's kind of like going to Disneyland. You pay the big ticket fee, you get in, and then you're like, well, geez, now I've got to pay for this, souvenir and that. And so you really have to approach it. And I think the best candidates do. And I've been fortunate. We all see each other out on the trail. The people you've mentioned, I've been at events with every one of them. Was just at an event with Mick McGuire today. You have to be serious about what you're doing. And I think that's what really separates the candidates who will go far, whether it's in their first race or their second or third, from those that just kind of burn out. And I've been fortunate to have good people around me, and we're doing it the right way.
How many hours a day in a week are you doing this?
Every day. I try to keep Sundays somewhat protected for family. We do Sunday dinner at my mom's house every night, church in the morning, try and just decompress. But other than that, it's every day. And it's from the minute you wake up, whether it's just checking the news, checking in with your team, to last night I was going back and forth with my campaign manager up until 10:30 on some things, preparing for the next day. No 2 days look the same. Today is a great example of a very sort of typical campaign day in that, you get up super early, kind of checking in on what needs to be done, making some calls. You do a couple hours of call time, fundraising. That's part of the game. Everyone wishes it wasn't, but it is. Do that. Then I went to a Republican women's luncheon. Then I had a Zoom call with someone that was interested in Arizona politics. Now I'm here with you doing a radio interview. When I get home, I'm going to work on some documents that my team tells me I must finish. And so it's more than a full-time job. And I know some people run for office while holding down a full-time job. Again, great respect. That's very difficult to do, at least at this level, at a congressional level or certainly a statewide. But it's, again, it's about anything in life. You're going to get out of it what you put in. And, you put in the hard work, you put in the time to build relationships and get to know folks. I really believe that will pay dividends on the primary on August 2nd and then in November when it counts.
Well, I'm going to mention this too, and this is not meant to discourage in any way. It's just the reality of life. My buddy God, he's got a really vicious sense of humor. When I get up there, I'm going to have some conversations with him about some things because there is, I will say to people, adversity builds character. But at least looking at my life, who needs this much character? So I came across, and I've mentioned before, off the air, I mentioned I was married to a wonderful woman that life partner, best friend, soulmate, and I remember when we first got together, I said to her, "This life is all about learning." And she said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "I'm not talking about trigonometry and stuff like that. I'm saying soul level learning that comes from the stuff that happens to you in life." Mm-hmm. She looked at me and she said, "I love you." She said, "I have believed that this life is really, it is all about character building stuff that, nobody is going to get everything they want in this life. It's about building character. It's about building intellectual strength, professional strength, and things like that. So I hope you were successful, but at the same point, sometimes my buddy God, he's got his own timetable in regard to things. We talked about Reagan earlier. It took Reagan a couple of shots, 2 terms as governor of California, 2 runs for the White House, and then became one of the greatest presidents in the history of our union. But it is the test, the crucible of being in this, figuring out how to win at this, to deal with the adversity of it. That is really the thing. But if you can do it, I think it makes you a bigger, better, and stronger person.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm glad you bring up God. Today at the Mesa Republican Women's event that I was at, 1 or 2 of the candidates, they were doing a forum, talked about faith. And I have to tell you, it was so refreshing to hear them say that because one of the candidates said, "I don't know how someone does this without faith in God, in something greater." And that just went to my core because I couldn't agree more. But you don't really talk about that on the trail. That's not something that comes up. I pray before every meeting I go into, before every day starts, I'm saying a little prayer. And what gets me through some of the tough days is knowing that I've got God walking with me. I mean, that's literally how I think it. And his will is gonna go the way he wants, and I'm gonna be fine either way. And so if I really can, when I internalize that, when I feel that I'm getting anxious, I remind myself of that. All is well. God is with me. I've said my prayers. It's gonna be fine. There's not lions and tigers out there. I'm not in imminent danger, and that really has calmed me, and that gets me through this. Because I got to tell you, the first month or so, when you're doing everything for the first time, your first group you talk to, the first club meeting you go to, I was in knots. every time my husband finally said, "You have got to, you have got to relax," he said, "or you're gonna, kill yourself before you make it through." And he was really right. And so faith for me has been such a huge part of this journey, in a way that I didn't expect. It's actually increased my faith. It's increased my practice in that way, and it's such a comfort. It really is a comfort.
Now, you mentioned your husband a couple of times.
Yes.
Which I like, because I read an article in Men's Life magazine one time, and the guy who was writing the article was talking about divorce, and he said your selection of a mate is the most important thing, because he said, and he wasn't being cynical about this, but he said, because he said if you marry the right person, you marry somebody who can be a partner, you marry somebody who can be a source of wealth. And what he basically meant is if you get divorced, now you got to figure out how two can live as cheaply as one. But if you marry and your spouse has capability and you have capability, that in that context it enhances the pairing. And I know that I have a friend who worked for one of the other radio companies, and he called me one day, and he said, "Hey," he said, "Can you cheer me up?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I got fired today." First thing I said to him was, "What did your wife say?" He said, "Well, I haven't told her yet. I'll tell her when I get home tonight." Oh. And I mentioned that to my wife, and I said, you would have been the first call. I would have had the first 6 numbers dialed, just out of instinct.
Right.
But I find that marriage partnerships where two people really support each other, because I don't think you can do this with a spouse who isn't into it with you and doesn't support you and believe in you.
Yeah, that's when I say that this was a family decision. I absolutely mean that. This started with, before I talked to anyone else, Steve and I had a conversation, my husband, and then it evolved. And as I said, it came back around, and he and I are sitting there, and he says, "Swing the bat." But he is my biggest cheerleader, my biggest source of. He's an advisor. I can talk about issues with him. He helps me refine what I'm doing. He picks up the slack. I am gone most nights during the week at this point. He picks up the slack at home, and there's no guffawing about, another night. He's just completely got my back in a way that I don't want to do life without that kind of support. I certainly don't want to run for office without that. And, there's been 1 or 2 tough days when it was, you needed the shoulder to literally cry on, and he's there, and he, gets you back up and says, "Okay, it's back at it tomorrow." And I couldn't be more blessed. And, I can't imagine doing this alone and doing it without him.
God bless him. We'll take a break here. We will continue in a moment. Tanya Contreras-Huilas running for Congress. We forgot to say what district this is. Unless people are able to identify it from the Greg Stanton seat. We will come back and do that in just a moment. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX.
Eye on the White House.
President Biden says he knows prices are high on just about everything, but he counsels patience.
The idea we're going to be able to, click a switch, bring down the cost of gasoline is not likely in the near term, nor is it with regard to food.
The president spoke after the latest report that found consumer prices have jumped by the fastest pace in more than 40 years. The president noted supply chain issues brought on by the pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine have all played a part.
Trying to work through, a war.
The president faces the added pressure of trying to get a handle on prices ahead of the November midterm elections. Eye on the White House. I'm Linda Kenyon, CBS News.
Nobody should have to pay for one-size-fits-all insurance coverage. Liberty Mutual customizes your car and home insurance, so you only pay for what you need. Visit libertymutual.com to learn more. libertymutual.com.
There are a lot of famous doctors. Doctor Who, Dr. Dreamy, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Evil. but none of them compare to my favorite doctor, AC Doctors. Why? It's the only doctor I know that saves me money. I had AC Doctors come out and diagnose my 20-year-old AC and found out we needed a transplant. Then, AC Doctors found a way to save me $2,000 on a new system. Plus, now my energy bill is less than half of what it used to be. Having AC problems? Call AC Doctors at 602-767-7400 or visit theacdoctors.com.
Hi, this is Mike Siegel. The local talk continues every weekend on 1100 KFNX. Join me every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 6 for world, national, and local newsmaker interviews, plus your telephone calls. Whether it's happening in our nation's capital in Washington or in the state capitol in Phoenix or in your hometown, we'll be talking about it. Mike Siegel, live local talk on the weekend, Saturday afternoons from 4 to 6 on the Pulse of Arizona 1100 KFNX.
Let your voice be heard. It's Talkback Arizona on 1100 KFNX. Call 602-277-5369 in the Phoenix Metro. Statewide, call 866-536-1100.
We are back. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. Tanya Contreras-Wheelis is with us today. She's a candidate for Congress, and we're going to stop right here. Can't tell the districts without a scorecard, and we're going to ask Tanya, tell us, there's been so many changes in districts. I refer to this in the name of the incumbent as the Greg Stanton district. I think that'll help people to know about where it is. But what's in the district, and what number is it now?
Sure. So the old district, for lack of a better word, was District 9. And so that was well into Phoenix, Arcadia, Biltmore, down into Tempe, and a little bit of Mesa. The new district is now District 4, so I'm running to be the Congresswoman in District 4. And it is a compact East Valley seat. So it is now all of Tempe, Ahwatukee, so all of Ahwatukee, a little bit of Chandler north of the 202, and then almost all of Mesa out to Power Road. So if you look on a map, it's again, it's a nice compact East Valley district. Interestingly, the congressman is running in this district. He no longer lives in the district. He was sort of cut out of it, but in Congress, you don't have to live in the district you're running in. So this is it's a very good district for me. I mean, from an electoral standpoint, this is a district that Democrats had held this seat for the last decade. And frankly, the district overall had voted Democrat up and down the ballot for the most part. And so in redistricting, we really saw that shift, which is why there's so much national interest in this seat now. It went from, PVI, this won't mean a lot to most folks, but let's just call it a Democrat advantage of 9 or 10 points, to now being a Democrat advantage of 1 or 2 points. Oh. So it's really, this is a toss-up race, and for that reason, as you can imagine, as Republicans look to take back the House, this is an incredible pickup opportunity. And what I believe is we win this seat this year, we Republicans, we're going to hold it for the next decade as well. And so you're going to increasingly see a lot of interest. I've done interviews with NPR, the New York Times have been interested in this race. And so I think come October, when we're talking about that map, this is one they'll be talking about.
And we will continue the conversation with Tanya Contreras-Wheelis in just a few moments. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. This is our continuing coverage of election 2022, now only 60 days away. News time at 5:30.
Get your information download throughout the day, on the hour and half hour, on 1100 KFNX.
CBS News special report. President Biden delivers an address after recent mass shootings in New York, Oklahoma, and Texas.
For God's sake, how much more carnage are we willing to accept?
Mr. Biden is calling on Congress to take action.
We should reinstate the assault weapons ban on high-capacity magazines that we passed in 1994 with bipartisan support in Congress and the support of law enforcement. 9 categories of semi-automatic weapons were included in that ban, like AK-47s and AR-15s.
He also says there is a mental health crisis in this country and more mental health services are needed. And the president stresses,
this is not about taking away anyone's guns. It's not about vilifying gun owners. In fact, we believe we should be treating responsible gun owners as an example of how every gun owner should behave.
CBS News Special Report. I'm Jennifer Kuiper.
Arizona News Radio. A hearing is continuing as the Tempe City Council could vote today on whether to move into a negotiating phase with the Arizona Coyotes on the proposed new hockey arena near Priest Drive and the Rio Salado Parkway. Coyotes CEO Javier Gutierrez told the council that the team hopes to work with the city.
We feel very strongly that we have presented a compelling proposal, but will ultimately make this project successful is the partnership we build with you and this community.
A new poll says voters have a mixed view of Arizona Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema.
Overall, she has a 42% favorable rating and a 44% unfavorable rating. But her numbers are above water with Republicans, yet upside down with voters from her own party.
Pollster Mike O'Neill. The heat's on its way to Arizona. The National Weather Service says a high-pressure system could cause temperatures to climb over 110 in some parts of the state next week. Bob McClay, Arizona News Radio.
An interesting day on Wall Street today as stocks moved lower and then rallied sharply into the close, even amid concerns that the Fed will continue raising interest rates over the next couple of meetings by a half point and possibly not slow down, even though inflation in some senses appears to be peaking. Concerns about the war in Ukraine, the reopening of China adding to oil demand, not really affecting the markets at this juncture. And in fact, the market's looking through a variety of issues, with the Dow closing up 434 points to 33,248, a better than 1% advance. The S&P up 1.8%, the NASDAQ up 2.7%, or 322 points to 12,316, with the small cap Russell up 2%. ADP said the economy created 128,000 jobs, less than half than what was expected in the private sector last month. Jobless claims moved a little lower to 200,000. Oil rallied, gold rallied, interest rates moved up a bit, while the dollar weakened on the day.
This is TJ Matthews from the KFNX Weather Center. Dog days of summer have arrived in the desert Southwest, with high temperatures for the rest of the week in the triple digits. The KFNX Metro Phoenix forecast as we head into the evening, looking at a clear sky overnight, low 75. Tomorrow, Friday, sunny, high 102. West-southwest winds gust to 20 miles per hour. Sunny Saturday, high 101. This is TJ Matthews from the KFNX Weather Center.
Currently, in downtown Phoenix, it's 102 degrees.
It's Talk Back Arizona with Bill Brady on 1100 KFNX. Let your voice be heard. To talk to Bill and all of Arizona, call 602-277-5369 in the Phoenix Metro. Statewide, call 866-536-1100.
Welcome back. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. Our election 2022 coverage continues today with Tanya Contreras-Wheelis. She is running for Congress. This has been an enjoyable conversation. And question number 2 today was going to be, tell me about your background, but I don't think we got past question 1. So good to have you here today. Tanya is running for the Congress in, what district is it again?
District 4.
District 4. They say at the ballpark or maybe at the basketball arena. Notice that lead in.
That was good. That was good.
That what they always say is can't tell the players without the scorecard. Well, now you can tell the players. You just can't tell the districts without the scorecard. So this again is District
4.
District 4.
And it's Tempe, Mesa, Ahwatukee, and a bit of Chandler. So East Valley.
Okay. Now, the allusion to the basketball arena is because you were associated with and had a big job with the Phoenix Suns for a number of years.
I sure did. Go Suns. I've been so lucky. I've had a great career. Certainly the Suns were one of the highlights just because I'm a big sports fan, but I started as an attorney, which was less exciting. Became the first in my family to graduate from college. After that, went to law school, practiced for a few years, and then became the CEO of the Arizona Bankers Association at the ripe old age of 27. And that was, really an incredible opportunity for someone like me to get in and work with our community banks and advocate for that industry. And so I did that for about 7 years. And then found myself at the Phoenix Suns, which was incredible. I mean, I grew up going to games at the Madhouse on McDowell. I watched, yeah, I know, that's old school, but,
you know. She officially wins the Phoenician Award for...
I am a Valley native through and through. But we watched Tom Chambers and Dan Marley, and I mean, I grew up doing it from the nosebleed seats, I might add. And so then to be in a position where I'm working with the team, I was a senior vice president, oversaw about 5 different departments there. And literally, Tom Chambers and Dan Marley are my colleagues, my coworkers. Like, I pass them in the hall. It was like, pinch me. Yeah. And I might add, I had much better seats than I did at the Madhouse. So it was pretty cool.
Now, I do have to memo to Greg Stanton. Greggy, wake up. You got competition. She's got winner written all over her. I say that as a compliment to you.
Appreciate that, Bill.
I've had the opportunity. I think by now I've probably interviewed at least 25 candidates.
Wow.
And it's one of the things I always, in running radio stations and television sales operations and newspaper sales operations, I always interviewed a lot of people because I felt that when you did that, you saw the cream rise to the top. You just, if not, you could talk yourself into hiring the wrong person. But if you went deep on interviews, you would all of a sudden start to see that the people just distinguished themselves or didn't. But anyway, so that's the background.
Yeah, I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, I did have my own small business for about 5 years. And so that actually taught me a lot that I hadn't learned at those prior jobs because I had the benefit of, infrastructure and departments and things. And so I've got a real soft spot in my heart and when I go to Washington to fight for small businesses because it's a lot harder than it looks. And so those folks who are putting their own life savings on the line and capital to make things happen, who are writing checks and employing people, that's the backbone of our economy. And we've got to make sure that we are allowing them to thrive and innovate and do the things that a great economy has. And so that's another piece of my background that I think is just really key in terms of what I hope to do in Washington.
Well, it's the backbone of the economy. And when you consider the risk that people take in terms of leaseholder improvements and investments in the business and marketing and all that kind of stuff. And it can be whisked away in a moment. I was furious with our mayor here 2 years ago because she shut down the bars and restaurants on St. Patrick's Day.
Wow.
It's like my reaction to it was, do you not realize that's one of the big revenue days for bars and restaurants? Especially the Irish one down the street that had, would have 5,000 people in the parking lot and brought in all the extra food, beer, and that.
Right.
And they find out it's going to be closed at 7 or 8 o'clock that night. It's just nuts. But that's the kind of the vitally important thing is the foundation of small business in our economy. And I think somebody going to Congress has to understand that, not just understand the Fortune 500 companies. Now, there are a lot of big issues you're going to deal with when you get there. What would you say this election as an issue is likely to turn on?
This is going to be a kitchen table election. This is going to be a pocketbook election. And by that, I mean, this isn't about some narrative in D.C. This is about families right now that are really struggling and really hurting. So, as I mentioned, I got into the race back in August. I have been talking with families and individuals and seniors, folks who are retired, every day since then. And what I hear over and over, there are 2 issues that come up, Bill. And I will tell you, they have switched in terms of which gets brought up most, but they're the same. So the first is border security. Mm-hmm. The fact that we have got a completely open border at this point, and the Biden administration and the Democrat-run Congress is doing nothing about it. Nothing. They won't even visit it to see what's happening, because then they would have to acknowledge what a train wreck it is. I was just down at the border for the second time since I launched my campaign in August, and I'm pretty sure that's twice as many times as Biden, Harris, and Stanton have been there combined in the last year or two. So,
but have you been to France?
Oh, I have been to France, but not at the expense of going to the border. See, it's a great thing, Bill. I think we can walk and chew gum, right? I think you can go to all the fancy, goober smoocher events in France and elsewhere.
Can I write that down?
Goober
smoocher. Now, the reason I mentioned France was because that was Kamala Harris's excuse. I haven't been to the border, but I haven't been to France yet either. But goober smoocher.
That's a term of art, Bill.
Is this copyrighted?
Yeah, could be trademarked after today. But no, the border, and here's why. It's because there are a couple of reasons why I think this is so critical. It's because it touches our communities in so many ways. Number one, there is the drugs that are coming through. And this is what I hear about. I've got a 16-year-old who's in high school. I've got a lot of friends who have kids that are teenagers. And the idea that they could be at a party and make a bad decision once, right? And think, oh, you're taking your friend's, ADD medication, but it's been laced with fentanyl. And that could be the last decision they ever make. That's every parent's worst nightmare. And right now what we know is we have got record levels of fentanyl just streaming across the border. I was just down at the border. I was in Cochise County, and I was talking with a rancher there. And he said, there's a 10-mile stretch there where they just have constant activity. They do have the wall there. And he said, look, the wall slows them down, but it doesn't stop them. And he said, they'll catch, for every one they catch, 6 get away. And these aren't families, these aren't asylees, these are people who are running drugs. That's unacceptable. You also have the economic impact. The nonprofits and the folks at the border in particular are just being overwhelmed by the humanitarian need. That can't be overlooked. And then there is the actual humanitarian crisis of the trafficking of women and children that just breaks your heart. And so I always say to my more liberal friends, look, having a secure border, in my mind, should be nonpartisan. It's common sense. We all have doors with locks on our front doors in our homes. Why? It is not because we don't invite people in. It's that we want to know who's coming in. And to me, I see no reason why we would want any less at our border. We are a nation of immigrants. I do support legal immigration, but what I don't support is this tens of thousands of people coming across, being released into the country. We will likely never see them again, and we don't really know who they are. That's not acceptable.
Well, 19 of them got into our country in 2001 and took down the World Trade Center and attacked the Pentagon. We have no idea who's coming in. I had a state rep here a few weeks ago, and he said he got a call from the Border Patrol in Yuma. And they said, it's Russian Day in Yuma today. Able-bodied, adult men coming in.
That's right, military-aged men.
And we don't know because guess who's good at forging documents? Other governments. We don't know who's coming in. We might think we know their names, and we probably don't. And they could be here as the ultimate sleeper cells. I hope to high heaven that we don't wake up some morning and turn the TV news on and see something terrible has happened that later is attributed to terrorists. But I think we would be foolish to think that it can't happen.
Look, when you don't know who's coming in, you can't say anything can't happen. We know that there were, I believe it was 23 or 26 individuals have been apprehended at the border who were on the terror watch list. We know, we actually caught those ones. So who got passed? Again, I go back to this is something that really shouldn't be political. We've got all sorts of times when we can talk about, I believe that there are changes that need to be addressed with asylum, with immigration, with legal immigration, a whole host of those. But objective number one has to be securing that border. It can be done. We know how to do it. It just takes the will and the resources.
Tanya Contreras-Huilas is whether she's a candidate for Congress, running in what I've referred to as the Greg Stanton seat. That is District
4, soon to be my seat, Bill.
Okay, excellent. And when we do interviews in 2024, I'll be able to say, well, they're running for the Tanya Contreras-Wheelis seat.
Has a nice ring to it.
Although you really should correct me right here and say, Bill, I intend to be running unopposed in 2024. Okay, let's move on to something else. For people who are just tuning in, this is part of our election 2022 coverage. Tanya Contreras-Wheelis, candidate for Congress, Republican candidate for Congress. And at this point in the afternoon, Tanya, I have the retention of, I don't know, an Alzheimer's patient. So what district was it again? Maybe this time I should write it down.
District 4.
District 4. The producer knows. He's holding up 4 there.
It takes a village, Bill. It takes a village to run a radio show.
Thank goodness I got you both here. Okay, on to, we talked about the border. I got gas last night.
Oh,
in fact, I got to tell you a funny story. I was working for the Miami Herald back in 2008 when we had the big gas price run up. I'm at a gas station on Biscayne Boulevard, which would be the Camelback of Miami. And I'm standing there putting the gas in the car, and suddenly I hear, "Hey, Bill, what the F?" I didn't even know there was anybody there I knew, so I look over. It's my friend Sylvia, who was one of the other department heads at the paper. And she said, "It just stopped. What happened here? It just stopped." And I said, "That, Sylvia, is because they set the pumps for $75 is the most you can do. But it's not full." You're going to have to go back up there and tell them to reset it. But $80 last night, which it's not so much the money, it's the sign of what it represents, because there are people out there, there's an enormous number of people. I wish I knew the stats. An enormous number of people in this country who live paycheck to paycheck. A change of $30 in the cost of filling up a car with gasoline is going to gork their horse.
Absolutely. Put that down, gork their horse, next to Goober Smoocher. We'll just keep a running list here. Really great sayings. So, no, you're absolutely right. I mentioned before I went off on my tangent on the border that there are 2 issues that come up. It's the border and it is inflation. What's interesting, when I first got into the race, it would be border first, then inflation. What's happening now, when I talk to people, it is inflation, inflation, inflation. And yes, they're still very concerned about the border. I mean, it's out of control. So I talked about my new district. This is a very suburban district. So to your point, we've got a lot of young families that live paycheck to paycheck. We also have a large retirement community. Those are also fixed incomes. They've got what they've got to figure out where their money's going to go. I met with a woman a couple weeks ago in Mesa who has a young child. She and her husband both work. They live with families so that they can afford rent, which is another huge issue facing us, affordable housing. But they live, in a multi-generational home so that they can all afford it. And she said, here's the thing. She said, it has gotten so expensive that there are days where I have to decide, am I going to get gas or am I going to eat lunch? She said, the baby always gets fed. But there are some days that I'm making those decisions for myself. That is unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. And that is one person. And so I think we've got to look at this. And finally, I hope this administration is waking up. I mean, this is the thing. If there's one thing you can say about the Biden administration, is that they are asleep at the wheel over and over and over again. Inflation, it's transitory. Now Janet Yellen finally says, oh, well, maybe I was wrong about that. She kind of said that. Well, of course it's not transitory. And the problem with that is, same thing with baby formula. We can talk about that. They ignore it. Now it's a crisis. Oh, now they're jumping into action.
That's okay. In 3 months, we'll have enough.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Just, give your babies, ration it. It's unacceptable. And so all the time that they are sticking their heads in the sand because they don't want to deal with a bad reality, it's time that they're not taking action to alleviate it. So, let's look at gas. We need to unleash the energy potential in our country, full stop. You look at the price of gas. There's a number of things that impact the price. I think the price of crude oil is about 58% or 58 cents per dollar. The cost of the refinement is like another 18 cents. And then you've got 12 cents for the state and federal taxes, another 12 cents for sort of the marketing and distribution, right? So these are your costs. So when you look at how are we going to bring that down, there are a number of areas that you can attack. So number one, increase supply.
Mm-hmm.
That means let's roll back these executive orders and regulations that have stopped companies from producing crude oil here in our country. To me, that is just obvious. But then we can do other things. We talk about the cost of refining it. There are also some regulations there when you talk about adding ethanol and other things. I think some of them are set to expire in 2022 this year. And there are advocates saying, let's not renew that, and that will bring down the cost. And then when we talk about distribution, hello, Keystone Pipeline, there are things that were in the mix that would have increased our ability to transport, and this administration has cut them off. And then they seem surprised, oh, it's Ukraine and it's Russia. Look, there's no doubt that what's happening with Russia and Ukraine is impacting the cost of gasoline. Supply and demand, this is a global market. However, we are not doing everything we could do in our own country to ramp up our own domestic production, which would add to the global supply and ultimately bring those costs down.
Oh, don't worry. Biden's going to Saudi Arabia, so we're going to get some oil.
Oh, sure he is. After he's called them, a dozen names, and he's going to talk to them. He's already talked to Venezuela, I think, Iran.
Yeah. Oh, the first guy he's going to meet with in Saudi Arabia is the guy he criticized for killing the journalist. But I've got to get your thought on one thing here, and that is Janet Yellen.
Yes.
Did you notice that they put Janet Yellen out there to correct the record? Biden didn't do it. They didn't send the chief of staff of the White House. They made the good soldier Janet Yellen go out. I cannot tell you how much that ticked me off. This woman has a terrific reputation in academia. Mm-hmm. She's worked in a number of different administrations. I heard somebody describe her as she's somebody who can disagree without being disagreeable. She's a pro, and they made her go out and admit that she had stated it wrong. What about the head of the Federal Reserve? He said the same thing. What about the president? He said the same thing, but no, they did. That just infuriated me.
It's a lack of accountability. It is just an utter lack of accountability. They also sent her out back when they did their great, American Rescue Plan that pumped trillions more into the economy and said, oh, no, this will have no impact on inflation. I believe they sent Janet Yellen out to deliver that goodie as well. And you've got economists, some, Democrat economists, Larry Summers, I think, was one of them, looking around going, yep. Are you kidding me? There's no way you can put all of this additional cash in and not expect an inflationary reaction. And, of course, that's what happened. And as you said, they sent Janet Yellen back out. There's just a lack of accountability. There's a lack of action. And that's, again, I go back. You're getting me fired up, Bill. But this is why I felt compelled, I felt called to run for office. Because when you have got such a leadership void, you got to step in.
And we need some fighters. We'll continue with Tanya Contreras-Wheelis. I think she'd be a fighter. We will continue with Tanya in just a moment. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. We'll be right back.
A Better Life with Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
We've talked a lot about good sleep hygiene, keeping your bedroom quiet and dark and cool. Well, today, I want to focus on the dark part. Yes, I'm sure you sleep with the lights off, but what other sources of light are there in your bedroom? Do you sleep with the TV on, a device charging, your door or blinds cracked open? A new study out of Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine found sleeping for just one night with a dim light raised the blood sugar and heart rate of healthy young people participating in a sleep lab experiment. Previous research has established a link between artificial light at night and a host of other health problems. So before you go to bed tonight, turn off the light in your room and then check to see if there are other stray sources of light maybe you hadn't noticed before. Cover them up, or at least move them down to the floor level so they don't necessarily shine as bright. I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, helping you live a better life.
Angie's List is now Angie, your home for everything home. With Angie, you could cross your next project off your to-do list before this ad is over. Just tell us what you need, and we'll handle the rest, sending a top pro to get it done. Or browse reviews, compare quotes from pros, and connect instantly, all for free. For everything from routine maintenance to a dream remodel. Because however you want your project done, we'll get it done. Download the app or go to Angie.com. That's ANGI.com to get started.
As summertime gets underway, what do the kids have planned? How about a fun summer activity that will benefit them for the rest of their lives? Building math excellence with Mathnasium. Mathnasium's personalized learning plans are proven to improve grades and help kids catch up and get ahead. With live face-to-face instruction either in center or online, there's no better time for kids to take a leap forward in math than summer. And there's no better place for it than Mathnasium. To learn more and schedule a free consultation, visit us at mathnasium.com. Mathnasium. We're changing lives through math.
KFNX Cave Creek.
Honor our vets, past and present this Memorial Day. Our sponsor, Greg Clark Automotive Specialists, is family-owned and proudly serving Greater Phoenix for 40 years. They are your complete car care center for foreign or domestic vehicles, including repairs, service, brakes, diesel work, and more. Call 602-246-2881 or stop by 5838 North 19th Avenue. See why we are rated 4.7 stars on Google. Visit GregClarkAuto.com. Greg Clark Automotive, thanking our troops, veterans, and their families this Memorial Day.
Let your voice be heard. It's Talkback Arizona on 1100 KFNX. Call 602-277-5369 in the Phoenix Metro. Statewide, call 866-536-1100.
We are back. Tanya Contreras-Wheelis is with us. She is running for Congress in District 4. And this is part of our Election 2022 series. And as we come to the end of the hour, we'll have about a minute and a half here. I want to give Tanya an opportunity to speak directly to her constituents and leave a final message.
Great. Well, thank you, Bill. So during this race, I think a lot about my Nana, who immigrated here as a young girl from Mexico. My great-grandparents were farm workers. They waited nearly 2 years to get their papers to come here legally before settling down in the West Valley. And like so many others, they came here because they had a dream of a better life. And they saw that our country, America, the greatest country in the world, offered that. And so as I grew up, I knew that nothing would be given to me. I started working at the age of 14, put myself through college, became the first to graduate from college, and then law school. And so now to be in a position where I'm running to be the first Latina to represent Arizona in the United States Congress from either party is incredibly humbling. And I like to believe that when I win, my Nana, who is now passed, will be looking down on me and would be very proud.
I think she would be. You've already done a tremendous amount in your life to this point. Have a great marriage and a happy family. I am very happy for you, and I wish you the absolute best of luck and success in this race. A couple of months to go in the primary season, and then if you're successful there, you will have a big race with Greg Stanton for the District 4 seat. Thanks for being here today.
I look forward to it. TanyaForArizona.com.